it don't even make sense. I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, I was doing footage, I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you could figure out a way to pay a brother and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received.
Gene Deal just broke his silence, and what he's revealing is absolutely wild. That Netflix documentary about Diddy that everyone's been buzzing about? Yeah, Gene says the real footage he collected was way too explosive for Netflix to even touch. But here's where things get crazy. Gene's now getting ready to drop every single piece of evidence that 50 Cent had to keep under wraps, and it could totally flip the story we all thought we knew. Here's the deal. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard who witnessed everything up close, just sat down for a raw, no-filter interview, and he's not pulling any punches anymore. He says he was originally supposed to be featured in the Netflix doc. In fact, he talked with 50 Cent for nearly an hour. They had it all lined up, but something behind the scenes fell apart. Gene claims the director disrespected him, so he walked away, taking the real truth with him. Now Gene's ready to tell it all in the untold story behind the City College incident, the hidden truth about Anthony Wolf Jones, what really went down with Kim Porter, and why some top celebrities reportedly paid to stay out of the project. Everything 50 Cent couldn't include is about to be revealed in a way that will leave everyone talking. So buckle up. Before we dive into those leaked details, you've got to understand what was happening behind the scenes because this story is about to get wild. 50 Cent and Netflix just dropped a new documentary called Sean Combs: The Reckoning, and it instantly shot to #1. Everyone's glued to their screens, but what most people don't realize is that the version we got is missing some major pieces of the puzzle.
And I had the invoice to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I was like, yo, who do you think you talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff, the first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. You give.
There are stories left untold, the kind that change how you see everything. And according to Gene Deal, Diddy's longtime bodyguard, those are the ones that matter most. Gene Deal isn't just some random name. This man was right there through it all. The parties, the chaos, the business moves, the shocking moments, everything. For years, he's been holding on to footage, photos, and first-hand accounts, waiting for the perfect moment to finally reveal what really went on behind the scenes. And at first, he believed that this Netflix project would be that moment. Gene says he joined forces with 50 Cent's team early on because he believed this would finally be the time when the full story came to light. But when he met the director, Alex Stapleton, things took a turn. According to Gene, the meeting went south fast, and it changed everything. He had tried to do things the right way, putting together a package with 2 other men who'd known Diddy since the early days, Tim and Kirk Burroughs. Between the 3 of them, they could have painted the full picture, from Diddy's childhood days to the gritty street era and all the way to the empire he built later on. Gene asked for $50,000 for all 3 men combined. Not a huge ask considering the years of footage and information they had, but that's where it got messy. Gene says the director dropped a bombshell, claiming that 50 Cent didn't actually control what went into the documentary or who got paid, that his name was just being used to draw attention. Gene couldn't believe it.
If you can make a picture look like $10,000, $15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another, and I was like, all right, well then, F you. I spoke to 50, and then she said 50, and this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and goes out of this documentary.
He felt blindsided and disrespected. He even showed proof, invoices from other productions that had paid him before. But instead of respecting his experience, she allegedly brushed him off and accused him of exaggerating. Imagine that. A man who spent years in dangerous situations protecting one of the most powerful figures in music being told his story didn't matter. And that's not even the end of it. While Gene was trying to negotiate something fair for everyone, he found out Kirk Burroughs was quietly cutting a side deal behind the scenes. Classic industry move. Everyone looking out for themselves. Gene was trying to be fair, but the moment he saw what was happening, he walked away from the project entirely. That's why the Netflix version feels incomplete. The man who had the deepest insight refused to take part, but now Gene's ready to speak for himself. He's revealing everything they left out, starting with one thing the documentary barely touched, how Bad Boy Records was actually structured, because that detail changes everything. This is where everything starts to make sense. Kirk Burroughs, the same guy Gene Deal mentioned earlier, actually owned 25% of Bad Boy Records from the very beginning, while Diddy held the other 75%. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Diddy didn't put the company in his own name. Instead, the ownership was listed under his mother, Janice Combs. And according to Gene, that move wasn't random. It was strategic. Gene claims it was part of a plan to protect himself from legal trouble. See, right after the tragic City College event in EA, where multiple people lost their lives during one of Diddy's early shows, lawsuits were expected, so by keeping Bad Boy Records out of his own name, he could shield himself and the company from financial liability. It might have been a clever move, but it was also deeply controversial.
Well, what I feel about the documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was going to do something and they're going to say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big. It wasn't only Tupac, you understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in, you got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones.
But Diddy didn't stop there. According to Kirk's own claims in past testimony, things took a much darker turn when Diddy decided he wanted full control of the company. Gene says Diddy allegedly confronted Kirk with threats, forcing him to sign over his 25% stake. Kirk tried to fight back in court years later, but the case was dismissed due to timing issues. Imagine building something from the ground up, only to watch it slip away like that. Kirk, who once helped launch Bad Boy Records, ended up with nothing while the empire they built together grew into $1 billion machine. The Netflix documentary briefly mentioned Kirk's story, but Gene insists they didn't go nearly deep enough. He says the truth about how Diddy used his mother's name to hide financial control and avoid lawsuits never made the final cut, and he believes that was no accident. Now, this is where things take a much darker turn. Gene Deal says there's a whole story the documentary completely ignored, the story of Anthony Wolf Jones. Wolf wasn't just any associate, he was there from the beginning as head of security for Bad Boy. Long before the record deals, long before fame, Wolf was protecting Diddy and running the streets alongside him. Wolf knew everything. The internal drama, the payoffs, the feuds, and even the behind-the-scenes business secrets. He was loyal and trusted, but that loyalty came with serious risks. According to Gene, Wolf's fate was directly tied to choices made within Diddy's inner circle. He claims Wolf's passing wasn't random, that it was connected to powerful figures and dangerous rivalries tied to one of hip-hop's most notorious groups, the Black Mafia family BMF. Gene insists the Netflix documentary avoided this entire storyline, either because they didn't have the full evidence or because they chose not to go there. But for those who really know the history, Wolf's story is key to understanding just how deep this entire situation runs.
Who was from Bad Boy, from its conception as doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clyde Davis.
And according to Gene, the truth about what happened to Wolf could completely rewrite the history of Bad Boy Records as we know it. The documentary only flashed a few photos of Wolf, called him security, and moved right along. But why? Because that story is way too dangerous. It connects to serious underworld figures, organized crime, and people who still have real influence. Netflix wasn't about to take that risk, and even 50 Cent likely decided to stay clear of it. But Gene Deal insists that this story must be told because Wolf's passing wasn't random. It ties directly into everything else that went down behind the scenes. Now, what Gene revealed next is even more shocking. And honestly, it'll make you furious once you hear what was left out. The documentary touched on the City College tragedy, but it didn't tell you what really happened that night. Gene Deal was there in person. He witnessed every moment with his own eyes, and what he describes completely changes the story we've been told. It was December 28th, 1991. Diddy organized a celebrity basketball game at City College in New York, a charity event that was supposed to bring the stars together for a good cause. Heavy D was involved, and the guest list was stacked. Mike Tyson, LL Cool J, and tons of big names were expected to show. The energy in Harlem that night was electric. The gym was packed wall to wall, and excitement turned into chaos fast. Gene Deal's security team had originally been hired to manage the outside. He came with 18 men, trained dogs, Rottweilers, and pit bulls, and full control systems in place. Gates, crowd barriers, coordination, they were ready for anything. Gene knew what could happen when celebrities showed up in Harlem. He'd seen it before.
It was Puff, Heavy D, and Jessica. You know what I'm saying? Jessica was the reason why those kids lost their life, because she locked the door on those kids running down the steps. You understand? You could see her name in a news article, but they didn't mention nothing about her taking place, but they try to put Heavy D, God bless the dead, out there and they put Puff out there. You know what I'm saying? She should have been the main one because she is the one who locked the door on the kids. You understand? She is the one who locked the door on the kids, and all those kids lost their life.
And he was prepared to keep things safe. But just one day before the event, everything changed. Diddy came to Gene and told him Heavy D didn't want his security team anymore. They were out. Just like that, the entire outside security operation was canceled. That one decision would change everything. When the big night came, the place was packed beyond capacity. Thousands of fans flooded the entrances, desperate to get inside. When Mike Tyson and LL Cool J entered through the main doors instead of the back, the crowd exploded in excitement. People started pushing, rushing forward, and that's when things spiraled out of control. What happened next is horrifying. The stairwells became jammed as people surged forward. And according to Gene, the reason so many were trapped wasn't just overcrowding, it was something far worse. Among the event's promoters was a woman named Jessica Rosenblum, who was working alongside Diddy and Heavy D. When she saw the chaos unfolding, Gene says she panicked, but not for the people. She was worried about the box of money holding all the ticket sales. According to Gene, Jessica grabbed the cash, locked the door at the bottom of the stairs to keep it safe, and that single action sealed the fate of everyone inside that stairwell. With the door locked, hundreds of people were trapped as the crowd behind them kept pushing. Panic set in and people began collapsing. 9 young attendees lost their lives that night. Gene tried to reach them, but the crowd was too dense. He had to sprint around the entire building, find another entrance, and fight his way in to open the doors from the inside. By the time he got there, it was too late for some. Gene performed CPR on a 17-year-old boy, desperately trying to save him, but it didn't work. The boy's brother stood there crying, saying, "This was the first time I ever took my little brother anywhere. My mom's gonna be so mad." It was a heartbreaking moment that Gene says he'll never forget. And here's the thing. Gene knows exactly who locked that door. He knows how it all went wrong. Yet Jessica Rosenblum, the person he says was responsible for locking it, never faced any real consequences.
Have you seen that the documentary, the 50 Cent?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
For Diddy?
I haven't seen it.
Oh man, you working
Everybody
hard.
telling me you got to see it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Part of me don't want to see it.
You probably don't.
Because it's all skewed, man. Like when you put stuff together, you create whatever narratives you want to, and at the end of the day, everybody being programmed. You know, right now the man's serving time.
Right.
You know, he went before the court. The court said this, and everything is God. But God said this is what he got to do. He got to do 5 years in pen. Let him do his 5 years.
Her name appeared briefly in old newspaper reports, but that was it. No charges, no accountability, nothing. The documentary barely scratched the surface of what truly happened that night. They focused on Diddy and Heavy D, but completely left out the critical details. Why Gene's security team was fired, who actually controlled the entrances, and who locked that door. The result? Viewers saw a version of events that glossed over the most disturbing truth of all, that 9 lives were lost that night, not by random chaos, but because money was prioritized over human safety. Gene Deal wanted to tell this story in the documentary. He really tried, but somehow his side never made the final cut. And that raises the big question, why? Why would they leave out someone who lived through everything and had the proof to back it up? When you dig into the behind-the-scenes drama, it's clear that what happened off camera was just as wild as the stories Gene was trying to expose. Here's what really went down. Gene had arranged a full package deal. 3 men who all knew Diddy from totally different angles. There was Tim, who knew about Diddy's early years and his rise in the neighborhood, Kirk Burrows, who handled the business side, and Gene himself, who saw the streets, the violence, and the behind-the-scenes chaos firsthand. Together, they could have told the complete story, from the block to the boardroom, but that's when things took a weird turn. The director, Alex Stapleton, started acting distant and dismissive. Gene says she told him that what he was asking for was too much money, even though his rate was the same amount he'd been paid for previous projects. He even showed her invoices from other major documentaries as proof, but she brushed it off. Then came the part that really shook him. She told Gene that 50 Cent had no control over who got paid or what footage made the final cut, that his name was only attached for promotion. Think about that for a second. They marketed the documentary as 50 Cent's take on Diddy, hyping up their long-standing rivalry, but behind the scenes, Gene was being told that 50 had no real creative control. That revelation changed everything. Gene felt completely disrespected. He'd been sharing his experiences for years on his own platforms, showing pictures, documents, and real proof. Yet this production, the one that claimed to be about uncovering the truth, treated him like an outsider. And to make matters worse, Kirk Burrows was quietly making secret side deals behind everyone's backs. Gene says Kirk was calling him, trying to convince him to take less money, all while negotiating his own contract on the side. That's when Gene realized this wasn't about truth anymore. It was about politics and control. Everyone was out for themselves, and the truth was getting buried in the process. So Gene walked away. And that's exactly why the Netflix documentary feels unfinished. The man with the deepest insight, the one who lived through it all, refused to take part after being treated like he didn't matter. As a result, entire chapters of the story were left untold. One of the most painful omissions, Kim Porter, Diddy's longtime partner and the mother of his children. She passed away suddenly in 2018 at just 47 years old, officially from pneumonia. But that explanation left a lot of people uneasy. Many who were close to her still have questions about what really happened. Kim wasn't just a name in Diddy's story. She was the story. She was there through every high and every low. She saw the business moves, the family life, and the darker sides of fame that the public never did. And yet, when the documentary mentioned her, it was only for a few seconds, a few photos, a short acknowledgement that she was the mother of his kids, and that was it.
You get that footage of Diddy.
I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources.
Does he know y'all have this in the doc?
I would doubt he knows.
So when this airs, that'll be the first time that his legal team, Diddy, that everybody knows that this footage is now seeing the light of day.
Gene says that silence speaks volumes. He knew Kim personally. He'd protected her before. He says he knows details about what she went through that were never shared publicly, but none of it made it into the documentary, not even a hint. According to Gene, the filmmakers decided that the Kim Porter story was too sensitive, too controversial, maybe even too risky to touch. For someone who played such a massive role in Diddy's life and knew so many of his secrets, the way her story was handled feels deliberate, like it was intentionally kept quiet. And that's exactly why Gene Deal believes the truth still hasn't come out. Let's get into something that's been raising eyebrows. The parties. Diddy was famous for throwing huge events for decades, the kind packed with A-list stars, actors, artists, athletes, even big-name public figures. Everybody wanted an invite. His parties were the stuff of legend. But here's the strange part. If Diddy's social life was so star-studded, why doesn't the documentary show any of these celebrities? Not one story, not one major name. Doesn't that sound suspicious? Gene Deal says there's a reason for that silence. He believes top celebrities paid serious money to stay out of the documentary altogether. Think about it. These are people with families, reputations, and careers on the line. If their names got dragged into Diddy's controversies, it could cause serious damage. So, according to Gene, some of them quietly cut deals to make sure their faces never appeared on screen. And as Gene puts it, 50 Cent, being the businessman he is, might have gone along with it. His goal wasn't to ruin other people's careers. He wanted to expose Diddy's behavior, not pull down everyone who ever showed up at his events. But that also means the Netflix version we saw was a cleaned up one, a softer version that protects powerful names while pointing the finger mostly at Diddy. Gene says it's obvious once you look closely. Now, speaking of stars keeping quiet, comedian Marlon Wayans made waves when he was asked about the documentary. His reaction? Interesting to say the least. When someone asked if he'd seen it, Marlon said he hadn't and probably wouldn't, but then he added something that made everyone stop and think. He called it a narrative, saying that when people edit things together, they can make it look however they want. He said people are being programmed. So what did he mean by that? Was he defending Diddy? Was he calling out Netflix for being biased? Or maybe, and this is what some insiders believe, Marlon has his own history with Diddy that he's not trying to revisit? Over the years, there have been quiet whispers in the industry about the two of them crossing paths in ways that never made the tabloids. Nothing confirmed, just rumors that never seem to die down. And when Marlon refuses to watch the doc, talks about how stories get shaped, and uses words like programmed, it really makes you wonder what he's hinting at. Gene Deal, who's seen more than most, probably has stories involving Marlon and plenty of other celebrities. But according to him, none of them wanted those stories aired. They wanted out, and they had the money and influence to make that happen. Now let's talk about the most controversial part of the entire project, the footage. The behind-the-scenes clips showing Diddy right before his legal troubles began. How did 50 Cent even get that footage? The documentary includes scenes of Diddy in a New York hotel room talking to his lawyer on speakerphone, venting about the media and planning his next steps. It's private, intimate stuff that clearly wasn't meant for public eyes. Here's what's wild. That footage didn't belong to Netflix or 50 Cent. It belonged to Diddy. A videographer had been hired by him to document everything during that period, maybe for a personal project or a future documentary of his own. Everything was supposed to stay private, covered by contracts and NDAs. Yet somehow 50's production got their hands on it. Once the doc dropped, Diddy's legal team reportedly fired off a cease and desist letter to Netflix, calling the footage unauthorized and improperly obtained. They demanded it be removed immediately. But Netflix pushed back, claiming they had acquired it through legal means. They just wouldn't say how. Meanwhile, 50 Cent has stayed quiet on where it really came from. And the videographer himself hasn't spoken publicly either. So everyone's left wondering, what actually happened here? Did someone leak the tapes? Was there a sale that went under the radar? Or did a former associate decide to cash out? So one theory that's been floating around, including from Gene's interview, is that Diddy's videographer might have been frustrated after not getting paid. Gene mentioned that Diddy has a long history of promising money but not always delivering, and maybe this was another one of those cases. If that's true, maybe the footage got sold as payback. Another possibility? Someone inside the circle handed it over for a price. Either way, the footage is the most powerful part of the entire documentary. Raw, personal, and uncomfortable. It's the side of Diddy nobody had seen before, but how it ended up in Netflix's hands remains a mystery, one that Gene Deal believes has a much bigger story behind it than anyone's letting on. Is this footage actually illegal? Nobody knows for sure, but one thing's clear. It's suspicious. It raises major questions about how deep this story really goes and who else might be involved behind the scenes. Gene Deal isn't just talking from the outside looking in, he's lived it. He has firsthand experience with Diddy's darker side, and one story in particular still shocks people to this day. After Gene stopped working for Diddy, he says Misa Hilton, the mother of Diddy's first son, Justin, reached out to him personally. She wanted to move on with her life, to be independent again, but she was scared. According to Gene, Misa was nervous about how Diddy might react if she started living freely, so she hired Gene as her personal security for a few hours. He charged her $2,250 for the protection. Before agreeing, Gene says he warned her straight up. If Diddy shows up and sees you with me, he won't touch you. He knows me. He knows I'm not afraid of him. And according to Gene, that wasn't just talk. Diddy knew better than to cross certain lines when Gene was around. The documentary itself even included a story from rapper and producer Eric Sermon. Eric described a disturbing moment when he was riding in a car with Misa and Diddy suddenly appeared. Out of nowhere, Diddy allegedly attacked her right there on the street. Eric said Diddy even challenged him to fight, told him to come around the corner, but Eric didn't take the bait. Instead, he got back in his car and drove off to clear his head. When Gene heard that story, he was furious. He said if he'd been there, he would have stepped in immediately, no matter who it was. That moment, to him, summed up what the industry refused to face for years, that Diddy had a long pattern of aggression, especially toward women. People knew, people saw, but nobody said a word because he was powerful and rich, and power made everyone look the other way. That's why when the video leaked showing Diddy attacking Cassie in that hotel hallway, the world was shocked. But Gene wasn't. He says that behavior wasn't new at all. It had been happening for decades. The only difference was that this time there was video proof. So after everything, what does Gene really think of Netflix's documentary? He watched it carefully, took notes, and his verdict wasn't exactly flattering. He said the whole thing was old news. Everything in it, the wild parties, the controlling behavior, the manipulation, the industry had known it all for years. The only thing that actually stood out to him was the behind-the-scenes footage of Diddy right before his legal troubles, seeing him stressed, pacing, talking to his lawyers, trying to manage the media storm. That part was new and it had value. But beyond that, Gene says it was all surface level. Nothing truly revealing, nothing that went deep enough to expose how big the web around Diddy really is. According to him, it was made to be safe, polished just enough to go viral without putting any real power players at risk. He says the documentary threw all the blame at Diddy alone, making him the sole villain while protecting the names of others who played major roles in what happened. And that's exactly why Gene calls the documentary incomplete. In his eyes, it tells half the story, the side that's comfortable for the industry to admit. But the other half, the one that names the people who watched, participated, and said nothing, that's the part they left out entirely. What makes it even more frustrating is that Gene has been telling these stories stories for years, long before Netflix stepped in, long before 50 Cent ever decided to produce a documentary. He's been sitting on podcasts, going live on YouTube, talking openly about the things he witnessed. He's never hidden it. He's been shouting the truth into the void while the industry tried to drown him out. Now, with Netflix and 50's version out in the world, Gene says it feels like they took his story, watered it down, and sanitized it for mainstream viewers. They wanted something that got attention, not something that got dangerous. And so now I want to hear from you. What part of this shocked you the most? What do you think should have been included in the documentary? Do you believe Gene Deal's version fills in the missing pieces, or do you think there's still more we haven't heard? Drop your thoughts below and let's talk about it. And this story's far from over. If you enjoyed diving into this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. And as always, stay sharp, stay aware, and I'll see you on the next one.